Hey y'all, this is the Flipflop Experience podcast. I'm your host, Leah, an entrepreneur who turned my love of travel into a career. Travel is not just a hobby, it's a way of life. Making it happen can be tough. I'm here to offer practical advice to make travel more achievable. This isn't just about my journey, it's about inspiring you to pursue adventure and explore the world on your terms. Hello, and welcome to the Flipflop Experience podcast. I am here with my guest, Will Kennedy. Welcome, Will.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
I'm super excited to catch up with you. We met at a travel conference in the spring, I guess, and that was super fun. You were there working, right?
Yep, I was there representing Odin, or a company called Aways, which optimizes your credit card points and helps you find the best travel deals for hotels and flights.
Yes. So we ended up meeting at a after conference dinner that someone organized, which was really fun. Shout out to Eat Like Bourdain. And she arranged for us to go to a pizza place in Portland and eat pizza where Bourdain had eaten when he was there. And it was really funny because Will and I were on the same page about which was the proper pizzas to order off of the menu. So we selected for the table the pizzas, and then we will definitely have to pop up the video or pictures of Will sitting at the table with a bunch of girls that were all travel bloggers. And he thought that you could just put the pizza down and start eating, but he found out that that's not how it works with travel bloggers, right?
Not at all. But I was surprised that people took more pictures than the pizzas they ate. I know I'm a big eater, so I definitely took my fair share, but I thought it was surprising nonetheless.
Yeah, there's some really funny footage of all of the cameras going over the pizzas all at once. Everybody's waiting. You can't eat until everyone's gotten their shot. So that was super fun. And then we all helped vote on your social handle. So what's your social handle now?
My social handle has stayed unchanged. It is wilderness. You can find me on IG _wilderness _. And I just launched my x.com account as well. Same handle. And I'm going to keep running with it. You guys inspired me to take more photos of the food I'm eating and really go out of my way for the experiential restaurants that may be found along the way while you're traveling.
That's super fun. We all voted that we loved the current name. Will mentioned that he was thinking about getting a new name and using that one as his personal. We all vetoed it and said, nope, you have to keep that one and make a new personal because we like it. It's too fun. Wilderness is cute. So you were telling us at dinner.
It stayed there.
It's good. You made the right choice. You were telling us at dinner about your nomadic lifestyle, and we all had lots of questions. So where are you right now?
Right now, I am in Medellin, Colombia. Most people pronounce it Medellin, but here they call it Medellin. You kind of pull those two L's together. I'm down here visiting my girlfriend and her family, meeting the family for the first time. So I'm getting the immersive Colombian experience. We have an apartment. They have a house. We're like 2 blocks away from each other. So I had some space separation, but I also wanted to be able to spend a lot of time with them.
That's very cool. We're thinking about going next year. We just went to Colombia for the first time last year. And my son, who has eaten food in a lot of places, said that the street food there was the best thing he's ever eaten in his whole life anywhere.
He must love fried empanadas and arepas.
Yeah. I love the arepas,
yeah,
the cheese ones.
Mm-hmm. I think they have a brand called Choclo. That's what my girlfriend Laura, she loves. And you have it every morning, or she does at least, with some eggs, avocado on top. What else do you need?
The one my son liked, I don't know the name of it, but it was like a round ball, and it was like grated potatoes, like hash brown. And then they put cheese in the middle, and then they just like deep fried the whole thing. This was in Cartagena, so I don't know if it's the same, but they were selling it on street corners, and we had to go like the night before we flew home. We had to like go there late at night and just get like one more because you know you're not going to eat it at home, but it was so delicious. I have a picture of it. It's like this cheesy, stringy cheese, and it was so yummy. So enjoy all the street food while you're there.
I definitely will. I think those are called buñuelos, and they're famous here as well in Medellin.
Yes,
you can find them in little roadside places. There's famous restaurants. I went through this one place. A lot of the towns in Medellin are named after either European cities or American places. So it was in Trinidad and Tobago was part of Medellin I was in. And it's like a little more like local. And the streets were filled with people, and everyone was lining up around this buñuelo place. And I walk in there, and I'm the only like gringo, or they call me mono, which is either white or blonde hair. And I'm there, and everyone's like looking at me like, who is this guy doing here? And I was like, I read on a blog somewhere that this was the best place for buñuelos. So they loved it, laughed, let me come in, and had a nice little experience.
That's awesome. So how have you been doing this nomadic thing? I know there's a lot of people doing it, and people do it in different ways. How's it working for you, and how are you making it work?
Definitely. So I've been doing it since about end of 2021. My theme is cancel your lease. If you want to do nomad, You start by canceling your lease and you'll figure everything out after the fact. And it started quick. I went to Mexico and I learned how to ride a motorcycle, learned how to surf, and start to speak Spanish all within a few weeks. And I was like, damn, I'm not taking my flight back. So I just canceled the flight, stayed in Mexico, and kept staying in this little town of Puerto Escondido. COVID was just wrapping up there, and it turned on. And we were there right when the restrictions were lifted. So life was crazy, but there weren't that many people. And that started the adventure. From there, I was like, wow, I can travel around while working remotely for a US company and get work done, but live a lifestyle that I never thought I could have imagined. And so for the first year, it was nonstop. I was traveling all around South America, Central America. I probably went to 10, 13 countries from the end of 21 into 23. And it was exhausting. I realized very quickly that to maintain that lifestyle, you need to kind of slow it down and start focusing on slow travel. So in 22 to 23, I think I slept in about 115 different beds across the 15 countries. So I would jump around quite a bit. But then in 23 to 24, I brought that number down to about 65 unique beds. And so my average stay went up by about 2 or doubled. And I started to relax and enjoy the place a little bit more. Spending 2 to 3 months in a place is my aim. And from there, you really get to have that immersive experience and go try restaurants off the beaten path or start to talk to people, know your neighbor, and some of the beautiful things of having a community.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Not a lot of nomads get.
Right, for sure. So you said at the beginning, you said were you doing this with friends, or who were you with when you first headed to Mexico and stayed?
So yeah, they were friends. I'm not afraid to travel alone, but it's always nice when you have a companion. And through my travels, it's been a exponential growth. You meet people like-minded who are also traveling, and then you start to form circles, and they may know other people that you know. And then you build out this network of hey, these are my nomad friends. And then I have my college friends, my high school friends, and my nomad friends. I can text them on a day, be like, hey, what are you doing in March 2025? Do you guys want to go to Japan? And 3-4 people may be like, yeah, sure. And then you start to form a squad. And then, okay, you're responsible for week 1 and 2. Then someone else is responsible for week 3 and 4. You can divvy it up that way. Create a Monday board. Everyone's responsible for different accommodations, trips, doing the research, and it makes that travel much more manageable. And you have a little group to go with, which is in certain countries like Japan, where it can be isolating travel alone. You want to have people with you from the start.
That's amazing. I love that idea. So you also get to experience people's different ideas of what would be fun, or their styles of travel as well then, huh?
I can be a little stubborn, and sometimes I don't want to go maybe to a specific art museum or go down and just try a different experience. But when you're traveling with other people, you have to find a compromise. And that means doing things sometimes that you wouldn't prioritize right away, which I thought I've enjoyed it a lot more. And I've been exposed to things that I've thoroughly enjoyed that I never would have done on my own.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so fun. I love that. I've been thinking lately, I hear about those things where you book where you don't know where you're going to go, and you tell them what you like and they just book something and you show up at the airport, those surprise trips. And being like the normal travel planner, it sounds really exciting to just, have someone else tell me what to do and what I should see. So that sounds like such a fun way to do it. I think I might need to get some of my friends and assign them things, and we can all take a week and plan something. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you're an expert at travel planning, especially because you host groups and take them to amazing places with great food. So have you done it yourself, where you went on someone's trip and just trust them blindly?
No. I actually sometimes am so surprised that anyone does it, honestly, because I have people come on my trips and they literally don't even really read what they're doing. It's really awesome that they trust me, but I guess they just totally trust me, and they're like, I don't know. And they'll tell me I just wake up in the morning and do whatever Leah says. That's just what I'm here for. And I can't even picture doing that. So I'm I love that you trust me enough to do it, but in my head, I can't imagine being the person doing that. So it's so hard for me to think I would just say, oh, whatever's happening, because it makes me have control issues, I think. But sometimes I see how much they love it. I have people that's been something that's been really surprising at my company, is that I imagine when I started my company that my clients would be people who were maybe newly retired and they wanted some hand holding because they hadn't really seen the world and they wanted to start traveling, but they weren't sure. And that's who I imagined my client to be. And at first it was about 50% of my client, but the longer I've been in business, the less those are my clients. And the more my clients are super serious travelers who are used to traveling the trip or planning the trip and know what it takes to plan the trip And then they realize, hey, if I find someone who knows how to do it well, I can let them do it and I can take it off my plate. And it's an honor that those people who have the ability and the knowledge and the skills and experience to do it trust me. But it always still surprises me. Like, it catches me off guard when I'll get on the bus in the morning and somebody will say, hey, what are we doing today? And I'll say, oh, well, we're going to drive here and then we're going to sleep in a luxury castle hotel tonight. And people will go, we're staying in a castle on this trip? And I'm like, didn't you read it? Like, that was one of the most expensive parts of the trip, And they're like, no, I'm just here. And I'm like, wow. So I haven't ever just let someone plan it. But I think I'm getting to the point now where I feel like that would be cool. And I'm actually about to do a mini nomad experience. So I leave in 2 weeks and I have 4 trips booked, but I'm just staying in Europe for 2 months. And I have some really good friends and clients, and they were kind of doing a mini nomad thing too. And so we decided to team up. And so we're staying together for the whole 2 months, and we're like staying in apartments or hotels. And we did split it up. We had like these eternal iPhone shared notes, that like went on forever. We were like posting different hotel ideas or how many nights should we stay here. And we made a spreadsheet and we worked it all together. And so we got as far as like planning everywhere we're going to sleep and how to get there, like transfers or planes or trains or whatever. And that's it. And now I talked to them yesterday and we're like, okay, we have an idea of the types of things we want to do when we're there, but we're really just kind of let the trip carry us and let the locals like guide us on recommendations where we should eat or what we should experience while we're there, because we're going to be scouting for future tours. So I think that's the closest I've gotten. And it was a really fun collaborative process, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
It sounds like you have the amazing clients because they become your friends, and then you get to spend time with them and travel, which is rare, but it's also a good thing. And I mean, 2 months, that's in prime time in Europe. September, October, my favorite 2 months there.
Mine too.
Everything's kind of died down, but it'll still be beautiful weather. Mm-hmm. You're going to have an amazing experience. I'm happy for you.
We're starting in Sardinia on yachts. So we're doing a week in Sardinia on yachts. And then we're going to go to Puglia, and then we're going to like Provence and Avignon. And then I have a tour, Champagne and Chateaus. And we're going to go to Florence, and then have another tour, food and wine. So we're just kind of bouncing around in between and experiencing things as we go. But it's my favorite time of year to be there too. So I'm excited to experience it all like that.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't think I'll be able to make it to Europe this summer or this fall. I've got events in the US starting in September. So I'll be in Colombia here for another month and a half. But this time, like I said, I'm with my girlfriend and her family. So this weekend, we're going to a finca about 2 hours outside of Medellin. Beautiful 40 acres of land, farmhouse built up onto the hillside, overlooking the valleys of Medellin, or like outside of it. And for, get to grill out, ride some horses, do some old school stuff. So this time I feel like I'm getting that immersive experience that just as a visitor, the last 3 times I was here, I didn't really get, because I was doing it through the eyes of going to Selena or going out to bars and clubs and hanging out, rather than just doing jiu-jitsu and yoga and going out on the weekends to fincas.
So did you meet your mom? Did you meet your girlfriend while you were traveling?
Yeah. So actually last time I was in Colombia, I met her here in a hot yoga class. I was with my friend Jose. He was from Spain. He'd come to visit for a week, and she was actually in the top right corner of the class. I was like 2 spots over. She left one empty for her friend. Her friend bailed. So then there was space between us, and we didn't talk during the class, but afterwards she came up to me, asked me for the spray bottle to clean her mat, but in flawless English. And I was like, oh my gosh, you speak English. And she was like, yeah. I was like, how do you know to speak English to me? She was like, well, look at yourself. And then from there, it was just kind of like, I didn't leave her alone. I was like, oh, what are your favorite restaurants here? Perfect. She had a whole list, huge foodie, broke it down by category. I was like, oh, perfect. We should check some of these out. And I was leaving in a week, and I told her that up front. I was like, hey, I actually have to go back. But we went on a few dates and really hit it off. And the following month, she was headed to Madrid. And so we stayed in contact. And like 2 weeks before her trip, I was like, hey, what if I joined you in Madrid for like the last few days and you extended? She was like, yeah, let's do it. And so then I flew out to Madrid, and we spent more time together and started dating.
That's awesome. That's cool that you can meet somebody doing something you love and you guys have that in common.
Which I find really rare when you're traveling around. It's like you have fleeting relationships because you're passing through the same places for maybe days or even like a week or two at the same time. But unless you're situated there and doing something that you would just develop as a natural routine, it's hard to find other people doing those, people who are like situated there. Because a lot of the locals know that you're just going to be transient versus other travelers who accept it.
Do you find it hard to leave when you're somewhere for 2 or 3 months? My husband and I would love to do like a long-term nomadic thing, and we always debate what's the appropriate amount of time to stay. Because I feel like you do have to slow it down or it gets exhausting. But on the other hand, I feel like if I stayed a little too long, it might get hard to keep leaving. Like, do you form those little communities and that relationships and then you're constantly saying goodbye? So how do you feel like that timing has worked out?
It's a really good question. Something I think is a lot of people do struggle with because they want community on one hand, but then they want to experience the world on the other. And so how do you kind of merge the two? And I find that I look at my travel experience as chapters. And so after 2 or 3 months, I'm ready to close the chapter. But I don't look at it as like I'm never coming back. It's just now I'm on to the next chapter. And a chapter later on down the road can revisit the same place and the same community. You just write it a different way. And my goal for life is to build out 3 or 4 home bases around the world. I have one in Vermont, one in Cape Cod where my parents live. I like Colombia. My girlfriend's here. I really like Japan and Hokkaido. And so having those 4 bases where I leave my gear and I can just walk around with a backpack and a computer is my goal. Spend 2 or 3 months in each spot and then leave 2 or 3 months to explore somewhere new and rotate that for as long as I can and see how kids fit into that is really the end game.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I think that sounds like a great way for kids to experience the world though. So it'll be fun. So you're in Colombia now. Are you working currently while you're there still?
Yes. So I work for a US company as my full-time W-2 job, and it's an experience company. We're a membership organization called R360. And I focus a lot with the sons and daughters of the members. The average age of the members is around 40 to 50. So they have younger kids, anywhere from 18 or like young through 30, let's say. And I really work with the 18 to 30 year olds and we call them the rising leaders. And we do rising leader events focused on building the bonds between these kids, but also experiencing the world in unique and purposeful ways, whether it be through volunteering efforts or, for one example, upcoming in Bozeman, Montana in mid-September, we're working with Heroes and Horses, which is a nonprofit organization focused on integrating veterans back into society after their tours through 41-day programs where you're doing sauna, ice bath, working with horses, camping out, really like cutting your own wood, no hot water, sleeping in cabins. And we're doing a condensed 4-day version of that where we're going to get the same Navy SEALs, same type of training, but over a much shorter time frame. And that's just one example of an event I'm hosting in the fall. There'll be a few others after that. So I plan those events while I'm traveling and then plan my travel around those events. So they work quite well together.
That's awesome. So have you had that job with that company the entire time you've been nomadic, or have you had different jobs that have worked around your nomadic schedule?
So that company I've been with R360 since I started traveling because they were fully remote. And it was just me and the founder, the original place. We were both in Brookline, near Boston. And he was like, I'm going to move to Denver. I was like, okay, so I'm going to go to Mexico. And he's like, all right, we'll be in contact. And then from there, it's pretty natural. And the company's grown to about 25 people. And I only get crap when I'm like in Japan for a month and the time zone's tough. And
right.
It's hard to reach me, which I get it. Fair.
Right. Yeah, it's challenging.
And then along the way, I've worked at a couple companies. Like I mentioned, a Waze. Mm-hmm. I love what you're doing with your friends and building out like that, like segmented, but together living a broad lifestyle. I started a company with a couple other nomads called Not Backpacking LLC. So we try to differentiate ourselves from backpackers.
Okay.
Because we're situated for a month or 2 months at a time in an apartment. And we want to attract those type of people who want to focus on work and health and then experience.
That's awesome. I think it's really good to give people an opportunity to connect with others that are doing it, because there's a lot of people that think doing these kinds of things like sounds nice in theory, but is anybody really doing it, and how can you actually do it, and that was one of the kind of reasons I started my company, and one of the biggest benefits was that when we would get ready to take a trip, our friends at home would always say like, oh, next time you go, I'm going to come with you. But then when I'd say, okay, well, we're going back to Italy in May and this is the dates, and they'd be like, oh, maybe next time, or I wish I could. And I was like, what? You said that every year, and so it was so frustrating to have these things that you would love to share with people. Like you said, like you can travel solo, or you can travel with just you and your spouse, or just your family, but there's something really special about sharing those kinds of experiences with people that you care about. And so it's been really fun and unexpected to see the kinds of relationships we built with clients and guests that have continued on to be friendships. And now we have built this community of people who love the same types of experiences and have the same types of values for their family. And that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, that is so inspiring. I get chills. It's because you and I both think the same way. I think about this is you can empower people to live a lifestyle that they couldn't have imagined before. And then once they have their grasp on that lifestyle, they're like, wow, it's attainable. And I can do this on my own. I can do this with people. I can do this however I choose, how it fits into my life. And I think that like the more people we convert to the light side, it's like, it's just better for the overall society of the world. Like, I don't know why exactly it all fits, but I think it's just like the more gig and more freelance focused people become, I think it's just going to open up more opportunities and make like borders less strict because countries will have to adapt.
Yeah. And I think that the people would get along better and there'd be less, contention in the world if people traveled more and were exposed to more cultures and other people, because if you grow up insulated in one place and one culture for a long time, you think people are so different than you, that things are so different there, and then that was one of my favorite things about taking my kids to East Africa was that I felt a little bit uneasy or nervous about going the first time. And it was crazy because I don't usually feel nervous. Like, people thought I was crazy when I took my kids to Cartagena last summer. People are like, what? And I don't normally feel nervous, but going to East Africa, I felt a little bit nervous. And my husband asked me, like, what are you uncomfortable about? And I said, I don't know. I think it's just that everybody tells me that I should be. Like, you just hear it so much that you start to question, like, should I be worried? Like, what should I think? And then when we went, we have this thing where at the end of trips, we always ask everybody, like, what was your favorite memory that you made this trip? Or what was your favorite thing that we did? And I said, my favorite thing was being somewhere, like when we went into a Maasai village, and you think like there couldn't be people who live more different than me in the suburbs of Dallas, as someone who lives in a hut made out of like sticks and cow dung, and they drink cow blood and cow milk and cow meat. And it's just like no electricity. They have to carry their water. You just think like they couldn't be more different. But then when you're there, you realize that we're all the same. Like, they just want their kids to grow up and be happy and healthy, and they just want to live their life. And I think that so many of us can really benefit from realizing that like all the people in the world are the same, and we all just want to like be happy and healthy and have our happy and healthy kids and live our lives. And I think it would be really great if more people experience that in the world, and hopefully they would be kinder and more empathetic.
Yeah, it's a fundamental human truth. That's how I overcame a lot of my like not anxiety, but like how can I talk to people who are older than me or younger than me? There's fundamental human truths that link us all together. And so you tap into that and everyone's pretty much the same. And they have the backgrounds, they'll resonate with the similar things you say, and you can connect. And I think we connected over food, one of the fundamentals. Right. And it opens up a lot of other conversations naturally once you connect over those, I think, like building blocks of your family or society and whatnot.
Yeah. And we're big believers that food is a huge part of getting to know a culture.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's like probably half the reason I travel places is to like go find little roadside places or restaurants that you like are off Google Maps, but you're like, wow, this is incredible.
Right.
So those memories I think stick with me the most. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the best travel memories for sure are those weird, unexpected places that you eat something that you'll never forget, like on the street corner or some little hole in the wall or whatever.
You ever find when you go back to those places and like try to order the same exact thing, like how does it stack up?
Yeah. The first time is always the best time.
Which is like, yeah, I think comparison is a thief of joy, but at the same time, I'm like, maybe sometimes you're just like, places should only be gone to once. And then you just tuck it away and share it with other people.
I think that's a really good thing why I've started leaning more. The more I've traveled, the more I lean towards slower travel, because at the beginning, it's all so exciting. You just want to run around and see everything and do everything. And I think that it's really, for me, I want to make sure that if I go to a place, there's some places I know I just want to come back to over and over again. But I also don't want to leave a place feeling like I have to come back because I didn't finish seeing it, whatever I am. So if I go to Colombia, I don't want to go to like 5 cities in a week. I'd rather just say like, I really saw Cartagena really well and I really enjoyed it. So if I don't come back, I won't have regrets. And so I think that's one of the things that has really taught me to slow down, is to say, there's places I'd love to come back. Most places I'd love to come back to. But if I don't, I saw it well and I covered it. And so going slower allows you to have those moments where if you don't go back, you don't think like, oh, I read about that place where I could have had buñuelos, but I never did it. And this time, at least you did it once. You know you did it. You enjoyed the experience and you had it. So
yeah, I completely agree with you. At this point in my life too, it's not sustainable to fast travel. I I was curious when you talked about your Europe trip, you're doing 2 weeks in different segments, but are you staying in one place for 2 weeks, or are you moving around within those?
No, we're doing 2 months, and it's about a week at a time. So I think the shortest stay is probably like 4 or 5 nights.
Nice. What I find with me is I detest packing and unpacking. So I like
Yes.
making that as smooth as possible is the key. And
Yeah.
especially on those shorter term trips.
We decided we're doing it carry-on only. We're just going to bring like a week's worth of outfits and just
Ooh.
wash our clothes a lot, because that makes it so much more feasible to pack. The more stuff you have and the longer you travel, the harder it is. It doesn't make any sense, but the harder it is to get it back into your suitcase and get it to zip. Like, it's the same amount of items, but somehow on week 7, they don't fit anymore. So you're like struggling packing it in. And I hate spending like an hour every time I'm getting ready to leave, trying to get it back in just right so that I can zip it. So I like to carry as little as I can so that I can just throw it in the bag and not have to really be jigsaw puzzling it that it only fits one way.
2 lessons I've learned about packing just generally is, yeah, carry-ons are key, but every time after like a month or 2 month trip, I'll go home, lay out all my stuff in my basement, super cathartic, and look at my items. What did I use the least? And whatever I use the least, the last 3 items, I chop it off and I don't pack them again. But then I implement maybe 1 or 2 new things that I didn't pack and say, like, now I get a chance to see if those will fit into my routine. And so then you kind of like start to do a stack ranking order of like things you use. And I was bad at this in the beginning. I'm getting better now, is I leave like a third of my Patagonia backpack empty because I know I'm going to want to buy like knickknacks and things for my house and just items that I used to care less about. But now I realize I do have sentimental items, which I've developed over the years.
Yeah, I definitely, that's when people ask me, how do you pack light? That's similar advice I give them, is that the more you travel, the more you realize that you lugged something around for 3 weeks and never used it. So to really think about, like, if you're only going to wear the hoodie 0 or 1 times, do you really need to carry it around for the whole trip? And if you decide when you're there that you really, really need a sweater or a hoodie, could you get one where you're going? And so to really think about it before you drag it around. But the more you drag it around, the more you think, I didn't use it enough to justify it for the next trip. And each trip you get less and less stuff in your backpack when you start to think about carrying it for all those weeks.
No, I completely get it. I'm impressed you'd be able to do it with a carry-on for 2 months. I think that's very commendable. You've got it down to a science, Leah.
It is down to science, because actually usually we do 2 carry-ons for 4 people is what we usually do. So we usually do 1 adult and 1 kid in each rollerboard suitcase. So we're technically doing half a carry-on per person, usually.
Wow. You should list your items at some point.
I do sometimes.
Sit down and do it. Or do one of those packing. Okay.
I did an unpacking video the other day because people didn't believe me that I packed for 3 weeks for Africa. I think we did 3 roll-up boards that time. Because we were changing hotels so much, I did not want to have to try so hard to get it in the bag. So I did an unpacking video and I showed everybody, I promise there's nothing magical happening in here. This is how many shirts I had. This is how many pants there were. This is what was in there. Swimsuits, toiletries. So I showed everybody what was in my bag. But sometimes I do write out a list, like 8 shirts, 5 pants, whatever.
Yeah, that's the type of shirts and whatnot. One thing you remind me of is the more I've traveled, the more I realize, like, I love buying unique things from that country that I can bring back home. And so like I measure maybe my growth and my maturity in travel is like this time around Colombia. I'm really excited to go to a city outside of Santa Elena, about an hour away, that only focuses on ceramics. And they're like famous. All these little shops have beautiful plates and cups, all handmade, but gorgeous. And it's well known here in Medellin. And so when I go there, I'm going to buy sets of plates and cups for my house in Vermont. And you can buy these handmade, hand-painted ceramic doorknobs. And for your drawers, I don't know the word in English, but I'm going to then put my whole bureau in Vermont will be those hand-painted, handmade ones. And I'm like, that's kind of stuff now I'm looking to gather and collect.
That does sound like a very adulty thing to collect.
Right? Which I never thought I would care about. But now I want like wooden bowls and cutting boards and things that like you could find elsewhere. But no, there's something about it here.
Yeah, it brings you joy when you use it, I think. So I like to buy street art and things like that. But yeah, things that just, when you're home, it makes you have a happy memory. The other thing we do is Christmas ornaments. So we buy a Christmas ornament everywhere we go. And so then when you decorate your tree, every ornament that you hang up just has like a happy memory attached to it, instead of just like random plastic stuff you get at the store. It's like oh, I remember when I got this in this little shop or on the street corner from that nice lady, and we were having so much fun, and it has like nice, warm, fuzzy memories attached. So I actually do a lot of custom ornaments from my trips. I give them to my clients so they can take them home because I think it's a fun tradition to share. And they pack
Yeah,
small.
it's a
They're
great piece of
small.
memorabilia. Yeah. And they're irreplaceable. That box at home you have of all those things, it's like a
Yeah.
walking diary of sorts.
One
That's
thing
a
I'll
really good
tell you that
idea
I
too.
One thing I'll tell you that I wish I had done started earlier was I wish that I had all of my kids pick one out every time for themselves also. Because I bought one for the family and I wish that like when my kids, I had been doing it all along. I started now, but I wish I'd been doing it all along that each kid got to pick one from each trip. So that way when they're an adult, I could have handed them a box and said, these are yours that you collected over the years and you can take it to your new home like as an adult. So when you have kids, maybe you should try that. You can send it on with them.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And then when they get their box, then like, all right, their kids will start their own boxes. And
Yeah.
then everyone will
Yeah.
have your own box in the family. That's a good idea too. What is something else that you've like wish you started earlier in your travels? I know you've probably been doing it for a few years.
The thing that I wish I'd started earlier is probably just packing lighter for one. And then also I had a recent guest on here and he talked about doing solo trips with his kids. And I kind of did it on accident with my son because my husband was working and we would go with him and we would do like one-on-one stuff. But I think that there's something really special about, we called him my little travel buddy and we did all kinds of fun stuff together and we called it just going to see what you can see. And we would just find something to do that day that was special and made those memories. Then my daughter was born in October 2019. So it was COVID. She was like a COVID baby. And so I wish that I had gotten to do more one-on-one adventures with her. And I want to try to be more intentional about doing that with her and making those memories because I think that it really creates really good bonds. There's lots of studies that show that making those foundational memories really create good bonds. But also I think it would help embed a true love of travel if they associate it with all those really good feelings and that special one-on-one attention and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I think that the experiences themselves are such strong memories because you feel emotions and the emotions resonate so strongly. I think the best or like the strongest memories I have with travelers I met was when I was like scared to death with them. We were in situations where we were in actual danger or like just perceived danger.
Right.
But those memories, when I think about it, like I can picture myself walking there and whispering like, guys, don't talk in English too loud. Just like, we got to get out of here or we should be nice to this person or, we got to pay them. And yeah, it really stuck with me. Not saying that you should go do dangerous things with your kids, but.
Right. No, but we had a couple of mishaps on this last Africa trip. That podcast coming soon to talk about those. But when we did talk about that, the bad things that happen, like quote unquote bad things that happen on your trip, make the best travel stories. And so when you come home from a trip, those are always the travel stories that you tell over and over as like the disaster thing that happened, that was so crazy. And you do remember it and it does make the best story. So you couldn't plan for it. And you don't want to put yourself in the situation on purpose, but usually when you come home, those are the stories you laugh about like forever. Like you'll be 80 and you'll be telling your grandkids about the crazy thing that happened to you in Colombia. Like, for example, you were just sick in Colombia, right?
Yeah, I got some kind of tropical fever. Probably 3-4 days after I arrived, it broke open. Like my whole immune system was kind of shot. And it started with just like weakness, chest pain. And then I was going to bed super early and then having fevers all night. My girlfriend was an absolute saint, took care of me with a bag of ice, like dabbing it on me. I felt very loved and taken care of. And during the day, I was fine in the morning, but then towards the night, it would just kind of come back and revamp its fangs and stick into me. And after about 4 or 5 days, the fever also broke and didn't go into the hospital, but I had taken a lot of ibuprofen and just over-the-counter drugs. So I was surviving. I wasn't ever really worried. And I'm glad to kind of get that out of the way earlier in the trip. So now I feel invincible for the next month and a half.
Yeah, that's always a scary thing to be sick when you're away from home. I think that feels really vulnerable.
Right. Do you have international health insurance?
I do. So our health insurance includes like international coverage, but before we had that insurance, I would often buy like traveler's insurance. We planned a lot of our trips last second, so I wouldn't buy the insurance that would cover like the cost of the trip if we canceled. But I did always want to make sure that if we were somewhere and someone broke an arm or got really sick, that wouldn't have to be the concern. I never wanted the concern about getting treatment to be, the payment or any of that thing. So I always would make sure I got the travel health insurance so we could go. And we've had quite a few adventures of using doctors and hospitals and things in other countries over the years, especially when you have little kids. It happens more.
I think that's part of the fun experience. My first trip in Mexico, I was surfing in Carrizalillo, a beach near Puerto Escondido. Got washed up on some rocks, and I was fine. Stepped down, went to swim back out, and realized there was a searing pain in my foot. Looked down, and sea urchin spikes just all in my heel. And I pull them out in the water. Big mistake. And I was like, searing pain. I was like, all right, I got to get out of here. There was probably 15 little barbs all stuck in my talon or my heel. And I went to one doctor right away, and she's like, oh, it's too deep. And I didn't speak really Spanish well, and she didn't speak English. So I was just pointing and just like, she understood. And she had a scalpel, and it was bad. And so then I had to go to another hospital by myself on a motorcycle, go in there, and they're pointing to a bottle of what I didn't know was anesthesia and saying like with a syringe, and they were going to put it into my foot. I was like, okay, do whatever you got to do. I trust you. And an hour later, I was able to walk out of there with a bandaged foot. And, it cost $25 in my health insurance. I use Alliance, costs about $200 a year, and they cover trips up to 45 days. And they have a little app. You just submit the receipt on the app, and they direct deposit the money back to your account. I mean, so far, that's cool. No complaints. So it worked well.
I have gone several times to the doctor or the hospital over the years, but usually that's one thing that's shocking as an American is the most recent time was in Slovakia. My daughter pulled like a marble table over on her hand, like right across her palm. The edge landed on her palm. Why you would put, it was like on a teeny tiny little pedestal and then the super top heavy, marble top, and it fell in her hand, and she's not really like a crier, and she kept crying and crying. So we were like, I guess we need to get it x-rayed. And so we they took like a taxi to the hospital, which was like 3 minutes away in Bratislava. And we were pretty nervous because we definitely didn't speak Slovakian, and it was the middle of the night. We didn't have anybody. A lot of times when I'm traveling, I have like a local with me, but I didn't have my guide there yet or anything. It was before the tour started. And so we went in there, and everybody spoke English, and they were super kind. And we had to like go to this one room and see a doctor, and then they sent us somewhere else for an x-ray, and then we came back, and her hand was fine. They were like, it's just bruised. She's okay. And of course, like right when we got to the hospital, she stopped crying and acted fine. And we were like, well, we're already here, so we're going to do this. And then at the end, they were like, we're not able to process your insurance here, so you're going to have to pay cash. We're really sorry. And we said, okay, well, what does that mean? And they said, it'll be 66 euro. And we were like, oh, okay. I'm thrilled to pay 66 euro because if I was at home, it would have cost way more than that. And so every time that we've had that kind of incident, I've honestly never even submitted it because it was always such a smaller amount than I anticipated that it felt like I don't even know if I want to do paperwork for this because I'm just feeling so grateful that that's all it was, and that it was so much less than I was expecting to pay.
Yeah, it's something I find with my nomad friends. They're always astounded by the cost of healthcare in the US.
Yeah.
And I had a friend from Slovakia actually visited me in Vermont beginning of the summer, Milos. He runs a nomad travel blog. He helps tourist agencies make their accommodations and their activities more like, let's say, more
authentic,
appealing to nomads. Okay. Yeah, but like he helps them position. But he was in the US, terrible toothaches. And he goes to the dentist, and he's like, yeah, you might need like a root canal, and you don't have insurance here. And dental for us is separate in the US, and for him, I think he was quoted almost $1,000 to fix one tooth.
Yeah.
And he was like, or I could just go back to Slovakia in a month and it's free.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, I was like, you could use my insurance and like pretend to be me because they never check. But he was like, yeah, I want to come back to the US at some point. I was like, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So he ended up just, foregoing his medical procedure and kind of getting in pain through it with some Novocaine and some basic stuff they gave him. And I felt terrible for him. And I was like, that's just such a handicap for anyone who comes to the US who doesn't have US health insurance. Well, we have it the reverse. If we go to other countries, we don't have their insurance. It's not dire.
Right.
We still get services.
And I think that's something that holds people back a lot. They think if I go stay somewhere, what will I do for healthcare? How will I have healthcare? Because it is such an obstacle here. But I think that's a great story to share with people who are thinking about trying the nomad thing, is that actually sometimes it's much more accessible and affordable than it was even if you stayed home. Even with insurance.
Right. And completely. And what I find in other countries, a lot of the drugs that we have to get prescriptions for are over the counter, especially here in Colombia, in Switzerland, a lot of the European countries. They're just like, be responsible, but you can get whatever you need, even if you are seriously ill. But I think in the US, we just have a knack for taking advantage of things, which
I agree. Yes. Well, I've loved chatting with you and getting to see your face again. And I can't wait to follow along with your adventures. So thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody one more time how they can follow you and learn more about your nomadic adventures.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at _wilderness_. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, William Kennedy, if you'd like, or just started x.com under wilderness, same one as well. But we'll be posting there more soon, and looking forward to connecting with anyone who wants to, step outside of their normal day to day and help them achieve a more nomadic lifestyle. Always happy to answer questions and talk.
Awesome. Thanks, Will, and happy adventuring. Thanks for being part of the Flipflop Experience. Make sure to subscribe and follow on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Flipflops and Adventures.